Hello, dear students of final year BA, Special English. This is Dr. Sunil Jadhav, Assistant Professor, Department of English, SGM College, Karad, an Autonomous College. I am here to discuss with you about the paper Introduction to Literary Criticism. Students, before going towards the actual topic, I want to discuss with you about the syllabus prescribed for this paper. As you know that you have completed your 4 semesters. When you are studying in BA1, you have completed your semester 1 and semester 2. And in BA2, you have completed semester 3 and 4. Now you have to face semester 5 and semester 6. So, the syllabus prescribed for this paper is divided into 2 semesters, that is semester 5 and semester 6. So, let us discuss about this syllabus first. For semester 5, there are 4 modules prescribed for you. Module 1 is Introduction to Literary Criticism, and in this module, there are 2 topics. And the topics are nature of criticism and function of criticism. What is the nature of criticism and what is the function of criticism? So this is the topic of study in this particular module. Then module number 2 is dedicated to classical criticism. And in this classical criticism, you have to study 2 concepts of Aristotle, namely the concept of tragedy and the concept of ideal tragic hero. Both these concepts are taken from Aristotle's Poetics. So, what is tragedy? What is its definition? What are its features? And in the same manner, what are the qualifications of ideal tragic hero? So, these are the things you have to study in this particular unit. Now, module number 3 is based on neoclassical criticism. And in this particular module, you have to study Dr. Samuel Johnson's Preface to Shakespeare, a critical essay composed by Dr. Samuel Johnson. So, you will study in this particular essay Samuel Johnson's views and on Shakespeare, and also neoclassical characteristics or characteristics of neoclassical criticism in this particular unit or module. And then final module, that is module number 4, is based on literary terms. There are so many literary terms. For your syllabus, there are 4 literary terms prescribed, and these are symbolism, realism, humor, and paradox. So you have to study these literary terms and the contribution of these literary terms in the development of literature. So this is the syllabus prescribed for this semester 5. Let's see the syllabus prescribed for semester 6. For semester 6, there are also 4 modules. Module number 5 is based on romantic criticism. And in this romantic criticism, you have to study Wordsworth's theory of poetic diction, which is taken from his great critical essay, Preface to Lyrical Ballads. So, in this particular unit, we will study the poetic diction, that is, style of language which is used by poets, writers while composing their work of art. Now, in the module number 6, the title of this module is Victorian Criticism. And in this particular module, you have to study Matthew Arnold's touchstone method Actually, touchstone is a hard stone which is used to assess the quality of a metal, whether it is pure gold or not. So the same technique is used by Matthew Arnold particularly to assess the worth of the work of art. So we will study this particular thing in this module. Then next, module number 7 is dedicated to modern criticism. So in this particular module, we will study T.S. Eliot's Tradition and Individual Talent, one of the critical essays by great modern poet critic, that is T.S. Eliot. And last module, that is module number 8, is dedicated to practical criticism. Here in this unit, you have to study how to appreciate a poem. An unseen poem will be given to you here, and you have to appreciate, analyze this poem by answering some questions which will be asked under the poem. So this is the syllabus in short prescribed for this year, that is final year BA, for this particular paper, that is Introduction to Literary Criticism. So why this particular syllabus is prescribed to you? Of course, there are some objectives. So we must know these objectives, and these objectives are to introduce students to the major trends in literary criticism. There are a variety of trends, movements in literary criticism. So the purpose behind prescribing this syllabus is to make the student know about these trends, movements. This is one of the objectives. Another objective is to make you students familiar with some critical concepts, major critical concepts, such as we have seen Aristotle's concept of tragedy, his concept of ideal tragic hero. So these concepts or many more which are prescribed here, you have to understand. And for this purpose, this syllabus is prescribed for you. One more objective is to help you students study the original contribution made in the field of literary criticism, such as Aristotle's Poetics. Original contribution. So you students must know this original contribution made by these masters, so that you can learn original things. This is one of the objectives. One more objective is to acquaint you students with the various literary as well as critical movements, such as classicism, neoclassicism, romanticism. So these movements you must know in criticism as well as in literature. And one more and final objective behind prescribing this or prescription, this particular syllabus, is to train you students to write critical appreciation of poetry. So how to write an appreciation or how to play the role of a critic. This is the objective behind prescribing this particular unit, that is practical criticism. And you can learn this particular thing while studying or after studying this particular unit, that is practical criticism. So these are some objectives behind prescribing this particular syllabus. Now, without wasting time, let's come to the point. So today's topic of discussion, that is first topic, the nature of criticism. So nature of criticism, while studying this particular topic, there are so many problems before us. What is the nature of criticism? Because there is no any particular definition or particular idea. There are so many views, variety of views are there. Initially, we have to think about its originality. What is criticism? So, etymologically, this word criticism is derived from the Greek word kritikos, meaning judgment. And hence, criticism becomes an exercise of judgment. Means to criticize means to make judgment. And so it is an exercise of judgment. Similarly, our focus is on literary criticism. So literary criticism naturally becomes an exercise of judgment on literary works. So while studying literature or while evaluating it, critic always tries to, make his judgments. He tries to make his comments. And that exercise is called as criticism. So it is the play of the mind on a work of literature. Play of the mind on a work of literature. See, play of the mind means while assessing or evaluating that work of literature, critic's mind plays on various aspects. It thinks, the mind of the critics thinks on various aspects of that particular work of art. And after, assessing, evaluating, he comes to conclusion. And so it is called as a play of the mind of work of literature. So while, getting or while understanding this nature of literature, we can see that there are, variety of views, variety of definitions, variety of theories. And so we have to learn these views, diverse views or theories or definitions. Now see, these views and theories are not, similar. There is much, diversity. And after studying all these things, we can understand this diversity. Now see, Atkins's views on criticism. He says that criticism is the play of the mind on the aesthetic qualities of literature for interpreting literary values. Now see, once again, the play of the mind on the aesthetic qualities. What is aesthetics? Aesthetics means beauty in literature. Means critics' mind always, thinks about that beauty in literature. And while, finding out that beauty, he, focuses on that, valuable things. Means what is useful for the readers, what is good for the readers, for the society, for the community. So that is always focused by the critic, particularly literary critic. And he always, thinks about literary values. And so he interprets or he tries to interpret literary values. Then another comment, another point of view, or you can say definition, criticism is not only finding fault, but standard of judging well. So this point of view is based on the observation of Aristotle's view. Criticism means not only finding fault. Sometimes there is a kind of misunderstanding in the mind of the students. That is only finding fault, only finding mistakes, only pointing to the mistakes is criticism. No, only finding faults is not criticism, but standard of judging well. Means what is good in it, what is worthful, what is valuable. So critic has to show this, he has to point out this. So this is also the role of a critic. In the same manner, Addison, another thinker, philosopher, he thinks that the true critic dwells on excellence rather than imperfections. Now see, this is similar to Aristotle's view. Means true critic always resides on excellence. He tries to get what is excellent in that work of art, instead of imperfection or instead of error or mistake, instead of bad. He always focuses on good things in literature, according to Addison. Then New English Dictionary defines this term criticism as the art of estimating the quality and character of a work of art. See once again this definition, criticism is the art of estimating the quality and character of a work of art and the function of a critic. What is qualitative, what is virtuous is always estimated, assessed by the critic. And this is the main aim of critic as well as criticism according to this definition, which is given in New English Dictionary. Sainsbury, another critic, thinker, philosopher, he says that criticism busies itself with the goodness or badness, the success or ill success of literature from the purely literary point of view. Means good as well as bad is focused. And if it is good, critic says that it is good. And if it is bad, he focuses on that bad also. Means not only to focus on bad things and criticize or, only expose that bad from that work of art, but what is good is also focused. What is, worthful is also focused by the critic. There are some other views also. I.A. Richards' view on criticism is to set up as a critic is to set up as a judge of value. Means critic's role should be like a judge of value. In the court of law, we see a judge is there and he makes his judgments on the side of, virtues, on the side of truth. So what is truthful, what is good, should be focused by the critic according to I. Richards. Means focus should be on good things. Focus should be on virtuous things. This is the view of I. Richards. Matthew Arnold, Victorian critic, he thinks that criticism is a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. Very interesting definition. Disinterested endeavor means an effort without any interest, personal interest. That is disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate, that is transmit. Means critic's duty is to learn what is useful and that should be transmitted. Means he tries to transmit that, propagate that good, that best, which is knowledgeable one, which is accepted by all. So this is the view of Matthew Arnold. Similarly, Walter Pater, another great critic, he feels that, or he thinks that to feel the virtue of the poet, to disengage it and to set it forth are the three stages of critic's duty. He focuses on the function of a critic. According to him, what is the function of a critic? To feel the virtue of the poet, to identify the virtue, good, truthful, which is given, which is written by the poet. To disengage it means to, get that particular worthful or good composed or written by the poet and to use it for the people, for the readers. This is the view of Walter Pater. Then another philosopher critic, Spingarn, he raises some questions, and with the help of those questions we can understand this concept of criticism, this term. The main task of criticism is to answer three questions according to Spingarn. What are these questions? What has the artist tried to express? What has the artist tried to express? Means this is the duty of a critic, to find out that particular thing which that particular artist wants to express. Similarly, how has he succeeded in expressing it? If he becomes successful or not. And if he becomes successful, how he has become successful. So this is also the job of a critic, to evaluate or to assess. And finally, was it worth expressing? Means when he tries to get that idea from that work of art, is that idea useful, fruitful? So this is another question raised by this philosopher, that is Spingarn. Then major modern critic T.S. Eliot, he also comments on this concept of criticism or this term. According to him, criticism is the commentation and exposition of works of art. Commentation, that is commentary, and exposition of works of art by means of written words. He focuses on written words. Why? Because we know public memory is very short. What is spoken is not remembered, but what is written can be remembered for a long time. And so I think he focused on documentation. So what is expressed by critics should be in a written form, according to T.S. Eliot. Similarly, he again defines this term, or he expresses his views on this particular term, that is, the end of criticism is the elucidation of works of art and the correction of taste. Elucidation, that is explanation of works of art and the correction of taste. So this is the view of T.S. Eliot. So we have seen these views, different views of different critics, different thinkers, philosophers. And through these views, we understood that there is much variety, there is much diversity. And so, through this diversity, through this variety, we have to learn, we have to understand the real nature of criticism. So, why this variety is there? What are the causes? What are the factors responsible for this variety, for this diversity? Let us see, this variety brings out the complex nature of criticism and also its function. Why complexity is there? Because of this diversity. As there is diversity, there is complexity. So, the view of criticism has varied from critic to critic and age to age. So, this is natural. Because we know everyone's view is different. Yours is different, mine is different. So that is applicable here also. So this view or this, view of criticism varies from critic to critic as well as age to age as we changed in this course of evolution. So in the same manner, this criticism also changes. Then attitude towards criticism is determined by a number of factors. Means determined, or we can say affects or influences. Attitude towards criticism, affects, you can say, by number of factors. For example, likes and dislikes of the critic, his prejudices and predilections, that is fascination, his special likes of the critic. Means what the critic likes reflects in his views. Similarly, what we people like also reflects in our view. So the same thing happens with the critic. Critic's own intellectual preoccupation and his philosophy or outlook on life. So these things also influence criticism or their comments. Moral and religious bias. So how I think or what kind of religious belief I follow, that also affects my comments, my views. Same happens with critic, literary critic. Examination of moral worth and significance of work of literature. So all these things are, responsible for this variety, for this diversity of views. Theory of criticism is closely connected with the theory of poetry. Actually, theory of criticism, I think, is based on theory of poetry. Just like idea of criticism varies in accordance with the idea of literature. For example, neoclassical criticism is built upon neoclassical theory of literature. Modern criticism is based upon modern theory of literature. Romantic criticism is based upon romantic theory of literature. So, theory of literature affects or not affects but influences the theory of criticism. So, this is crystal clear. Critical theories are closely connected with the spirit of the age. Spirit of the age is also responsible for the evolution of literary as well as critical theory. What kind of spirit that age carries with affects or influences, not affects but influences theory of criticism. For example, in modern age, critical theories are connected with novel or unprecedented development in social and behavioral sciences such as psychology, sociology, anthropology. We know that modern criticism or modern literature follows psychological approach, sociological approach, biographical approach. We know that today in the modern situation, writers always try to express their inner mind. That is psychological approach. We know that literature is the expression of society, or society mirrors in literature, we say. So sociological approach is also followed today. And biographical approach. Today's writers are very conscious. They always try to express themselves through their mouthpieces. So this is biographical approach we can see in modern literature. And the same reflects or follows, you can say, by many critics. Even Marxism has given rise to Marxist theory of literary criticism. So these are some, causes or factors responsible for this variety of views. These are some reasons. And considering all these views, considering this variety, considering this lack of unanimity between critics regarding nature as well as function of literary criticism, T.S. Eliot compares these professional critics to a Sunday park of contentious and contending orators. Contending and contentious, that is, debating, quarreling orators who have not even arrived at the articulation of their differences. So this is the situation. Means no one can, draw or can get the proper idea about this nature as well as function of criticism. And through this diversity, through this variety, we have to understand the nature of literary criticism. So this is about the nature of criticism in short. In the next lecture, we will discuss on the function of literary criticism. So till then, I wish you a nice time. Thank you. Thank you very much.